Did you have a nice lunch? Are you feeling like relaxed now for a post-prandial hive session? We've got a really lovely panel, so it'll be very relaxing, sort of chill, but also stimulating so that you don't snooze. We wouldn't want that. There's no natural light in here. The topic for today, and I'd also like to say hello to everybody who's watching online, so I know we've got a lot of people watching online as well, so we are thinking of you as ever, is building for the future. So we've got two panels this afternoon for you. We're exploring resilient ecosystems and thriving cities. Sounds wonderful. We're going to hear from the panels and the discussions first, but both of them are going to allow time for questions from the Slido. So log into Slido on the app, and be sure to click on the main hall so that you don't send your questions elsewhere. We want them here. We want to hear from you. And then you can participate and make this as interactive as you like. So first on stage, I would like to welcome our chair, Dr. Stuart Wainwright. So we can give it up for Stuart so he comes on. Woo! And he's going to be joined by Zoe Baumforth, Marjan van Aubel, Vanessa Miller-Fells, and Professor Anastasios Maragianis, and Dr. Jingwen Yang. So come on up to our shy panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. So welcome to this session on powering resilient ecosystems, where we're going to be delving into how we can power the planet in a way that doesn't cost the Earth. I'm Stu Wainwright. I'm your facilitator for this session, and I'm here as part of the Natural Environment Research Council, one of the sponsors of this event. We're the UK's biggest funder of environmental science, and we're all about trying to inspire great science that helps green growth, environmental security, and spur amazing innovation. I also head up the UK's Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and at that, we try and work at the nexus of climate, biodiversity, food, health, and water. We're all about trying to help governments, businesses, and people get inspired and hopeful about how they can overcome those challenges. And that's what this event has all been about, how we can use design to help provide inspiration and hope around the world in tackling these challenges that we all face. In this particular session, we've got a wonderful panel here that I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. We're going to really delve into whether we can create renewable energy infrastructure that regenerates biodiversity and protects human health and communities at the same time. And if we can, how do we best do that? But without further ado, let's meet our panel. So, Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm an ecologist by background. I've worked in biodiversity and nature for about 30 years. A big chunk of that has been on the ground in different parts of the world, actually measuring what's happening to nature on the ground. And I've done that in various contexts, from protected areas, regeneration, restoration, and measuring whether biodiversity is in fact coming back. And also in lots of different contexts of infrastructure. So I've measured biodiversity in big mines, on infrastructure, on rail lines, and on renewable energy sites as well. And now I run a company that is using technology to make that measurement easier, faster, and more affordable, to try to break down the fact that at the moment we tend to make a lot of assumptions, if we take an action, that there will be a particular outcome for nature, because it's been so difficult historically to measure that theory of change. And so the company that I run now, Pivotal, what we're doing is making that much easier for people and businesses to do, so that we can start to actually know when we take an action, or we make a decision, a design decision, for example, what actually was the benefit for nature. Do you want me to give in some introductory thoughts as well? Or?
Please, yeah, go for it. Give us your introductory thoughts.
So we're talking today about renewable energy and its interaction with nature. And I think in that context, I think I have three things that I would like to sort of, as a scene setter, that I'd like to say. The first is, when we think about anything that we're doing and its interaction with nature, we have to remember that one of the most non-renewable resources that we have on planet Earth is land area. And so when we're thinking about something like design choices for renewable energy, we need to remember that we need land for lots of other purposes as well as the land it takes to hold that infrastructure. We need land to grow food, we need land to live on, but also nature, and therefore we, also needs land. And we need land that is for nature, with healthy ecosystems on it, so it's relatively untouched, because we need that to support everything else on Earth. And so when we're making design decisions that around something like renewable energy or any infrastructure, one of the design decisions that is really crucial is how can I make this so that it uses the least amount of land possible, leaving that land free for something else, whether that's growing food or supporting nature. The second thing is that when we think about renewable energy, we need to remember that it isn't just a wind farm or a solar plant or anything else. It's everything else that goes into that. And Vanessa will talk also about the sort of after the creation of the energy part, but we often forget that to create, for example, a wind turbine, we need all the components that build the wind turbine. And a wind turbine is made of, for example, steel and plastic. And so in the design decisions of that wind turbine, we need to remember, and its interaction with nature, we have to remember that steel comes from iron ore, and iron ore is strip mined in places like Brazil or Guinea that was formerly forest full of different parts of nature that we would love to continue to exist on planet Earth. So we have to remember that there's also the design decisions around the components of the renewable energy, not just the sites that have the solar panels or the sites that have the wind turbines. And thirdly, it's really important, as I just said, to remember that if we are not measuring whether something is actually benefiting nature, we don't know that it is. So we might assume that we take a particular action or design decision with nature in mind. If we're not tracking the actual difference it made with data, then we can't be sure that it had the outcome we thought it would.
Wonderful. We'll pick up a lot of those themes as we go. Vanessa, there was a nice segue there to you. Do you want to introduce yourself and give your early thoughts?
Thanks, Stu, and thanks, Zoe, for the intro. You've teed it up. So Schneider Electric is not a renewable energy producer. It is a global leader in energy management and industrial automation. And what does that mean is that we design and we deliver the infrastructure or the backbone that powers the world. So from the plug to the circuit breaker in your individual homes, to outfitting the data centers, or building the medium or low voltage that brings the power generated from the wind farm or the solar farm to the homes or the hospitals or the infrastructure that we all live and work in. And it's really a system. And if we have to bring to vision that net zero energy and that net zero planet by 2050, we have to redesign this whole system. How we generate energy, looking at renewable energy, how we distribute that energy, and how we consume that energy. And that's really where Schneider Electric plays a big role. At Schneider Electric, I lead the environmental kind of stewardship, and now I'm just shifting to a role more focused on supply chain and operations, so really looking at the full value chain. So a lot of what you talked about, like sourcing the components to how we deliver to our customers, is really what I'd be looking at. And maybe if there is a few thoughts to guide kind of this conversation. So first, it's about redesigning the entire system. Again, from how we generate, how we distribute, and how we consume energy. And for that, there's so many parts to it. There's a full grid redesign. Historically, the grid has been very unidirectional, meaning it's a power plant that generates electricity, it's sent to your home, or it's sent to a consuming center. Now, it really needs to be bidirectional. We need to use all of that data that you mentioned to really be a lot more intelligent, to be a lot more resource efficient. Many of you maybe in the UK know that, the electricity varies in the time of day. And we have started to shift behavior based on prices, or also sometimes based on carbon information. This needs to be so much more broader, so much more deployed, and this is really where Schneider is working a lot, how to make the system, the energy system, intelligent, much more flexible, and much more also resilient. You're all very aware that with climate change already happening, unfortunately, our energy systems are a lot more fragile, exposed to heat waves, to fires, maybe less in the UK and Europe than in the US, where come from, but there's just huge changes that need to happen to this physical infrastructure. And also the irony is we talk a lot about digital infrastructure, but digital infrastructure is in fact very much hardware, analog infrastructure. And this puts a huge pressure on the resources we're all consuming. The world is getting less and less circular year over year. There's this report that's called the Circularity Gap Report that shows that last year only 7% of resources that were in circulation are being reused. And it's two trends. Yes, we're growing a little bit the recirculation of resources, a little bit, but it's outpaced by the growth of the extraction. And so what can we do on both sides of the spectrum from a design perspective to minimize the extraction and to maximize the reutilization? And at Schneider, we've developed, so the second thought is a kind of a very simple trifecta that we've developed at Schneider. It's not proprietary in any sense. I think Ellen MacArthur kind of really developed it in the beginning. But we train all of our engineers to think about how to redesign by using better, using longer, and using again. And we've had a lot of words around using better because it encompasses also using less. When you say use less very quickly, it sounds like useless. So we shifted to use better, use longer, use again. Very simple motto, but extremely powerful when you really take it to the core to see how you can change everything you're designing.
Excellent. That's the first motto for everyone trying to remember. We'll be testing you at the end. You're probably all getting all sorts of ideas for questions. I should have said at the start, we are using the Slido for questions, so just make sure you're on the main hall Slido, submit your questions, and we'll try to pick some up later. Marjan, do you want to go next? Introduce yourself and your early thoughts.
So, my name is Marjan. I'm a solar designer, meaning I design with the sun. And I think I'm using the power of design to move away from this technocratic view on solar panels. Because if you think about solar panels, you think about efficiency, payback time, and we're talking about energy. And I think we need a more human, emotional view on that as well. So I have a studio. I'm Dutch, but the studio is based in Italy. And we integrated solar into everyday objects such as a solar powered table, stained glass windows, but also moving into architecture. Think about organic solar panels that use the properties of colors to generate energy. Think about a solar panel. That's not what we're doing. And I'm also the founder of the Solar Biennial. That has a second edition now in Switzerland, and that is really to bring together all different disciplines. As you can hear, it requires so many different ideas, knowledges, and the aim of the Solar Biennial is to bring all these disciplines together: the designers, the architects, the policymakers, the ecologists, because it's such a broad topic and it's very complicated as well. My takeaway would be the power of collaboration. And I think we should also collaborate more with the sun itself, because the fact that every hour we receive enough sunlight to provide the world with enough energy for an entire year, that fact, and we get sun every day for another 5 billion years, and we're using it so limited. And I think we should really start thinking more like a cathedral thinking, and not only in 20 years, but in 100 years. So it's very complicated to think that big and so long term, because it's also the political climate is all the time 4 years. So what can we do? That's again collaboration, not only collaborating with the sun, but with each other, and sharing knowledge. And that's what I also like about this panel. We have a lot of different knowledge here.
Excellent. So that theme of collaboration is something we'll probably be hearing a lot about. Anastasios, do you want to go next?
Thank you, Stuart. I thought I'm going to go after Vanessa, so I was preparing the ground for Marjan. So I'm Professor Anastasios Maragiannis. I am a Pro-Vice Chancellor at the University for the Creative Arts, and I'm a Professor of Inclusive Design. So I'm here from a capacity in understanding neurodiversities and understanding engaging people. Zoe mentioned earlier about the what is next with financial and how we're engaging people in these processes, how we're changing mindsets. So, but I'm wearing a second hat, which is I am the chair of education committee for the World Design Organization. A lot of the papers and posters you see in the you can say I'm partially responsible for this. So, but what it came from this, the thematics and the sub-themes, we have a number of examples that they talk about zero emission, energy efficient, reimagining the industrial world, circular economies and systems. But across the papers submitted to World Design Congress for this year, one is clear, that achieving all the ambitions that we are talking here today in that panel or beyond is not a straightforward situation. It is a massive challenge, and the submission shows us how complex it is to shift from extracting systems to regenerative ones. So one of the things that I think that we would like to discuss and take from here is that design is no longer about sustainability or about just sustainability. It is about regeneration, it is about restoring ecosystems, it is about renewing resources and reimagining how we power life on this planet.
Wonderful, excellent. And now we're going to turn to our final panel member who's travelled the furthest to be with us. So we're lucky enough to have Dr. Yingwen Yang with us. She's going to introduce herself and also answer the first 4 questions. So can you tell me about your research into how industrial sites can shift beyond traditional forms of decarbonisation and more fundamentally create renewable energy and restore ecology?
Okay, thank you for that question. Our research in Pingdingshan is a concrete example of how we can move beyond the traditional decarbonization. Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Yang Jingwen, a postdoc from Tsinghua University, working on helping industrial cities transform through production, ecology, and culture. I'm working with Wang Shanshan. She's a landscape designer, and my father, Yang Peng, he's a chemical engineer. We are using my hometown Pingdingshan in China as an example of sustainable urban renewal. So how do we support nature and communities? My father helps upgrade production, like extracting hydrogen from coal to produce selene and nylon. So we are turning coal from a single-use resource into a reusable element in a new cycle. We also reuse industrial waste, such as turning mining waste gain into eco-friendly materials like brick. Shanshan and I focus on culture and design, turning old mines and factories into great social space where people gather and heritage lives on. My concept of cultural integrity aims to make industrial renewal not just eco-friendly, but also meaningful, creating jobs and uniting people through shared memory.
Wonderful. And I think we've got one follow-up for you on the back of that as well. So how's your new vision for industrial decarbonisation also able to help regenerate people's health and culture?
Okay. That's a key point of our vision. It's not just about technology, it's about regenerating the health and the culture of communities. This vision came to life in my hometown, Pingdingshan, was built around coal. It was China's first major mining base, founded in 1957. My grandfather was one of the first miners came this city, but actually he passed away in 2008 from lung cancer caused by his work, which is part of why I do and what I do. But now something amazing has happened. We turned the abandoned number 7 mine from a silent coal ash cover the site into a beautiful national wetland, full of egrets and enjoyed by everyone. Here's how we did it. First, we turned the waste into treasure, using mining leftovers to build park parcels and soil, less pollution, lower cost, and a healthier environment. Then we worked with nature, building sponge wetlands that clean rainwater naturally. Slowly, water cleared, plants grew, and birds returned. And we kept the memory alive. We saved the stories of miners and the machines through art and design. Now it's not just a wetland, it's a place where people work, birds fly, kids play, and the new jobs are growing. So this isn't just an ecological change. I think it's a warm, hopeful turn from an industrial past to a green future. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm sure all of you took an awful lot from that, an awful lot of hope and inspiration in that, and parallels for all the nations that we're from in that. Thank you. I'm going to start us off now to try and get a bit of discussion going. So, and there's some wonderful questions in the slider, which I'll come to in a moment. But I'll start off with how we can try and harmonise human activity and environmental stewardship and the role that design can play in that. Vanessa, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So, I mean, design is really core. I mean, as I've said, to create this world that you've just described, we have to redesign everything we've relied on over the last kind of many decades. For the energy sector, I've already said, it's about changing the design of how we generate, how we distribute, and how we consume. But I think another piece of it is how we design. Like, it's not just about product design. When I said the mantra, this is for the engineers at Schneider, and we have 10,000 engineers that, you know, have to really not just design one side and then do eco-design, or design and then measure, which has often been the case. You know, we've been at Schneider measuring life cycle assessments of our products for more than 15 years. We have a very large catalog of our commercial references, and we're investing a lot in that data. But if that data is after the fact, great, it informs the consumer, maybe it can play a role, but it really should be actionable throughout the design. And it's also about more than designing a product, thinking about the system. And then even beyond the system, it's about thinking about what you just described beautifully, the community and how you're embracing the community. And I have a few examples of what Schneider has done in different geographies that I think are, you know, they're just the tip of the iceberg in this, but it's just a direction that I wish we will continue to go, that really indicate that you're never solving a problem for itself. You have to think kind of beyond the initial boundaries. So, for example, we worked in Washington, D.C., where I was just living a few months ago, on a microgrid for the largest and historical kind of school for the deaf and mute in DC called Gallaudet University. And we built a microgrid for them to be resilient and self-reliant. But we built it in a way that, because we had the space, we had the land available, and we had the technology available, so that it could provide extra power to the low-income neighboring community. Because Washington, D.C. is an extremely diverse community and has significant low-income housing and African-American community. And this was really like, okay, not just I'm going to solve my problem of, yes, I'm Gallaudet University, or yes, I'm a power producer, and I want to ensure that I'm delivering a service that's reliant, that's clean, that's affordable, but I'm also going to see, okay, what can I do beyond my four walls to kind of really help and go beyond. Another example that I love is in California. I talked a lot about fires and climate change adaptation. Well, you're all aware that there's a lot of power shortages in California because of the climate change events. And we've worked with a county to deploy electric buses and ensure that they were bi-directional. What I said earlier, the importance is to make sure that our systems become more intelligent, and it's not one-way command and control. I mean, command and respond. It's really like talking one to another. And so these buses, they can serve as charging battery storage for the neighboring community center, the library, and they're also not just providing a service, which is, okay, I'm transporting people, but no, I'm also helping the community be more resilient in the face of climate change. And the last example, because we're in London, and I moved to London partly due to the beauty of its garden, we just partnered with the Kew Gardens. And here, I don't know if you're familiar, but the Kew Garden have these beautiful greenhouses that are, I guess, 150 years old. And they've decided to be climate positive by 2030, but it's extremely challenging given the amount of heat and also humidity that they have to maintain into these greenhouses. And so we're working with them hand in hand on how to bring that vision of a climate positive Kew garden by embedding an engineer in their greenhouses for as long as it would take to find the right solution, to deploy the right energy systems, and also thinking kind of beyond the four walls of the Kew Gardens to kind of what can we do to bring even more resilience to the broader community of the Richmond area. So I think these examples of like really thinking, okay, I start with this problem, but if there's co-benefits outside that I can bring, let's not like, let's make them part of the economics and the story we want to build.
That's a wonderful, full example. And you touched at the end on Kew Gardens, an example of sort of trying to inspire through such design. Marjan, I wonder if you want to expand on the role of design and particularly sort of storytelling and trying to make it joyful and acceptable for people.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because what does make us want to change things? You really have to feel something in order to do things different. It's something, it has to be like, it can either make you sick because you don't want something, or it's like, yes, I want that, it's so beautiful. So that's what I do in my work, to use maybe the power of beauty or magic a bit, to work with the senses, to really sort of, because if something is beautiful, you're kind of like attracted to it. Your brain has something that you want to be you want to be close to it. Because I don't think we're only going to change things with numbers and facts and why do you buy this car and not that car? It's why do you take care of that car so much and polish it every Sunday and show it off to your thing? Because you love your car, you want to take care of it. And how beautiful is it that your car is driving around using the power of the sun, and it's like not using this infrastructures anymore that we have here. So it's I think the power of design, coming back to the question, is storytelling, getting engaged. This emotional connection is super important as well.
That really, really resonates. We've got some wonderful questions. I'm going to come on to an absolute killer one in a minute and try and mesh some of the questions from the Slido on it. I'm just going to ask the organisers, see if they can give us any more minutes at all to get through some of the questions. So if you can squeeze us any more minutes, organisers, then put it on the screen and we'll get through it. So I'm going to mesh together one of the questions we've been given, but also some from the Slido. So, and this is real hard ones. So what new economies or financial investment models are required for this to work? And to pick up a couple of themes from the Slido as well, how can we break out of the short-term market and political cycles at the same time? So Zoe, we added on a twist there. Would you want to start us off?
Sure. I think there's a reason that that's the theme on the Slido, because this is the trillion-dollar question. Because some of the things that we're talking about might make, for example, energy more expensive, and nobody, I assume, wants to pay more for their energy. So in order for any of this to be feasible, we have to find a way for it to be, we have to find a way to meet the economic imperative as well. And I would say that waiting for government to do that is probably a fool's game. So I would say what we need to remember, there's a saying by Charlie Munger once said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And so I would say the economic models that we need to find are the ones where the incentive is aligned with where we want it to go. So if that is, for example, finding efficiencies so that you're doing something in your system design so that everything you're doing is more efficient, therefore cheaper, but at the same time, sensitive towards nature, leaving land spared for nature, or whatever it might be. Something about that system design choice made it cheaper and better. Those are the kinds of things that we need to figure out, I think, in the design. Finding a whole new financial system or a financial model, I don't think we have time for that, frankly. I just don't think. I think we've got 10 years at the absolute most to figure this out, and I think that's a much longer game. So I think we need to find a way to hack the existing system, and I think that's about incentives and careful choices so that the incentives are baked into the product or the system that we're designing.
Gosh, that might set off even more comments on Schneider on the back of that. I hope so, folks. I mean, this is a huge challenge, and I think Zoe's described it perfectly. Did any other members of the panel want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I want to, and maybe it's the optimist in me, but there's so much that already makes financial sense that can be done and deployed, particularly in the energy system. Renewable energy is the cheapest way to generate an electron in most countries at this point. And so it's as you said, it's maybe sometimes we have misincentive in the sense that there's still huge subsidies and much bigger subsidies on fossil fuel energy than on any type of other energy. So it's maybe getting rid of the things that are sending the wrong incentive and just then letting, in fact, the true market or the true like invisible end, which right now is not an invisible end, it's not like a market that's like perfectly functioning, to happen. I mean, there's so much in the energy efficiency. I mean, we're deploying it at Schneider in our operation. There is 80% of what you can do from an energy efficiency perspective has a 2 or 3 year payback. Yes, the 20% remaining is, 10 times harder. But if the world got to that 80% from a Pareto effect, we'll be in such a better place to be back to maybe not a 1.5 degree scenario, but definitely a well below 2 degree scenario. And so it's also like unleashing kind of that belief that yes, we can actually deliver so much more with the technology we currently have. We don't necessarily need to kind of go to fusion like tomorrow, or to go to even deploying like thousands of gigawatts of nuclear everywhere, but that's a personal comment.
Can I ask, so for example, if wind turbines are made partly out of plastic, which comes from drilling oil and creating the plastic from oil, and if instead and that obviously has a huge impact across all the different dimensions of climate and nature. If we were to redesign the wind turbines, I know this isn't your field of expertise, so that it didn't include plastic, I am assuming that there's a reason that design choice was made, and if we redesigned them so that they didn't require oil to build them, then they would be more expensive, and therefore so would the energy they produce. And so I'm kind of thinking if we need to think of the whole system, every part of it that's designed, and we need to stand back from the whole thing and think of it like that. There's so many touch points where we could be thinking, is there an easy win here where we can make it better and not increase the price of it? Yeah.
But I mean, we're dealing with plastics at Schneider. Most of our products, because the electric components have plastics in them to prevent, for safety purposes. And we have pledged to reduce our consumption of plastic. And we are using already more than 50% of recycled plastic. So first, there is tons of plastic already on Earth that can be recycled. And there is opportunity to recycle the plastic that is on Earth. Or today, only 6% of plastic is recycled. But there are sources of reusable material that are being untapped today. And yet, here, to your point, definitely need the incentive for the recycling to exist. I mean, recycling facilities indeed don't exist today at the scale that they need to operate at, or the reusing of materials. But and then to your point, are like wind farms. Yes, maybe there are some materials that are extremely challenging that are needed for that type of use, but there's so much less material that we can use on so many other uses. And so it's like being efficient where we need to be efficient, and using virgin materials where we ultimately need to use virgin materials. And that's that equation that we need to work on for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. We're getting deep, which is good. We've all been given more time as well, which makes us feel a bit more relaxed. Did any other members of the panel want to comment on that?
Yeah,
Marjan.
I was thinking using less materials means also being smarter with that also makes it more complicated, because then you layer things up, it's more difficult to recycle them. So it's like, again, how do you do that?
Yeah, this is one thing we're trying to work on, that having not mixed polymer or single polymer. I mean, yeah, the complexity of what we've built surrounding us, particularly in the built environment, everything is mixed. I mean, there's glue in pretty much every piece of wood that surrounds us, and that makes it very hard to recycle, reuse, or anything. So yes, that indeed is what we have to think through. It's how do you, and on the design better, this is a key part for Schneider. I mean, we don't work as much with wood, but it's how do we design in a way that it can be modular, that can be reused, that can be recycled, and that requires sometimes we use mixed components, sometimes we use not single polymers, sometimes we use a lot of, substances of concerns in plastics. And so how do you get rid of these things so that ultimately it can be recycled or reused safely for also the human beings who are dealing with these processes. It's not all solutions exist. That's not what I'm saying. but
again, if the incentives were such that, so for example, if it was much cheaper to take to recycle than to take virgin material, particularly something like steel or plastic, then people would find a way because they would make money off it. So they would find a way to take apart a wind turbine and recycle it, or a solar panel and recycle the components. So again, it's the incentives drive the outcome.
Definitely.
I think this is also getting to the heart of quite a lot of the questions on the slide, along the lines of how do you propose to tackle the negative impact of commercial interests? I mean, this is all about incentives, positive and negative. Also using data and science to provide that clarity and design that way ahead, crucially important on these major challenges. Anastasia, so I wonder from your perspective, is there anything you want to add on this?
I'm going to put quite a few of the things that you said earlier about the collaborations and the challenges. Going back to Young's work about the engaging people, cultural, ecological, educating participants, thinking about how educating people to confront all these challenges, where do we exist in a circular economy as human beings. We're talking about materials, we're talking about recycling, but how do we change the perception of who we are in this process? And it's not about engineering anymore, it's about the more cultural and ecological approach. So I think that the collaboration on that aspect is essential. We need to really rethink, reapproach, reset maybe the way we collaborate with different disciplines, different sectors, different practices, and maybe take a step back and say what we did well, what we failed, and what we need to see beyond what you already know. So you talk about systems, you talked about storytelling, you said about energy and cost, and then solar experiences and energy. So who do we need in this process? For me, one of the most important things that we need to consider is the people in making decisions.
Absolutely. So an awful lot of collaboration needed across sectors. I've got a really very good question in the chat here, which takes us into a slightly different direction, but also brings us into collaboration. This is one for you, Marjan. So, and it's purposely asked that, I don't know who it's from, anonymous. All the questioners are anonymous, but we can guess who they might be. So, Marjan, are you still of the opinion that beautiful aesthetics should be pursued in solar, and that beauty has a part to play in the design for planet?
What is beauty? I think beauty is also how it's been made. What are the materials are used? Where does it come from? Who's making it? And that's also design and also very much part of it. And what happens after it? Is it circular? How are things? Can you get things apart? What is happening after that? So, to me, beauty design is a full thing. It's like if it's looks very beautiful, but it's very bad for the future. It's very ugly then. I think that's it.
Did you want to expand? I thought you'd spark on that.
I think that I like this approach because beauty is also the use of beauty. I mean, for me, it's like the result of how you're using something in a product is as beautiful as the product is. So the purpose of the product as well. So
the purpose and the process also, what you said, and you live in Italy where artisanry is so important. Like what you just said, like who is making, how it's being made. How it's being manufactured. I think, that's interesting to think about. Purpose, processes, and beauty. How does all of this result in beauty?
I've got two more questions on the Slido, very different ones. One relates a little bit back to the discussion we were just having, but it's just come on, but it is a good one. So we were talking earlier about the need for design in so many different areas, and sometimes there isn't a solution to everything. But based on the limitation of finite resources, how do you decide which problems not to tackle? Does anybody want to go at that?
How do you decide which problem? Wow, that's
That is a tough question.
depends what scale. What scale are we talking about?
Go for any scale that you would want.
I think we have to think in terms of nested scale. So if we think about the problems that we're solving, which ones nest up into an overall problem? And if we're solving something at a smaller scale, because it's right in front of us and it's easy to do, that might be the right answer. But if we could solve a bigger problem, and in doing so that would solve 10 smaller problems, including the one that we're focusing on, but we didn't see the bigger problem because we're in our own little echo chamber or our own niche, and we haven't spoken to enough people who understand the other parts of that bigger problem, then we might be missing solving the big problem first and automatically solving all the smaller problems. So it's a really difficult, I don't have a straightforward answer, but I would say that if there is a way for us to step back from all the problems and work across different disciplines more, I think humans are amazing and so innovative, and we do so many incredible things. I think one of our Achilles heels is that we tend to focus on what we know and not necessarily talk to the people who focus on something else that we don't know, and so we end up not knowing what we don't know. And I think if we did that more, we might be able to solve more holistic problems at a larger scale, and therefore not have to make that choice so much.
Very good answer on the hoof to a damn difficult question. Well done, Zoe.
Yeah, so I just want to noodle on that question a little bit. I mean, the question is what design cannot address in a world of finite resource. And I don't know if that's part of design, but for me there's a question which is, we've often designed things that were here to generate a human need that wasn't there in the first place. And maybe it's design, maybe it's marketing. I guess we can get philosophical there, but so maybe the things that's not addressed by design is first understanding what are the human needs that we want to address first.
Yeah.
And do we really think about that collectively? Do we have a space to define that? What are the human needs that we absolutely want to serve, and the ones that are secondary or shouldn't be addressed?
And are we addressing the human needs right in front of us right now, like food and hunger and water and shelter? Or are we addressing the human needs over decades, like ecological health, without which?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll just step out of chair role for a moment. Something in my mind on that. If I heard about Dr. Yingwen Wan's work in China, the attempt there to take a broader long-term approach to thinking about how to solve the issues of former mining areas and turn them into healthier, economically viable, environmentally good areas. That sounds a better, longer-looking way to look at a problem than maybe what we did in the UK in the 1980s, with similar areas and similar industries. So that suggests that long-term approach is often the right way to go. Got one more very good question, which is quite thought-provoking. It's quite a fun one as well, so don't worry. So first of all, this is an amazing panel. Well, thank you. You're too kind. If you were to come together to form a single new company, what could you unexpectedly hope to achieve together?
Oh.
Do you want to start us off, Marjan?
Well, still thinking. I feel you know this answer.
I know the answer.
No.
What's the salary?
We can collaborate on this.
Let's hear the
What do I get? What to achieve? I mean, from the participatory approach of engaging people, and from your storytelling about saying that, going back to what you described earlier about your grandfather being part of this and coming back to this, I think is going back to the beginning, trying to rethink policy, who is forming policy, and then use the new policy to change practices, process.
So we become a group of activists together.
Activists. I mean, going back to the fine art studio, because we talk about like the making and the need to change things.
Yeah.
Everything starts in that fine art studio where the experimenting then becomes a solution to a problem that actually changed the way we exist, and then going back again to the studio because now we have a new problem because of this product we created. So I think this is where circular economy comes in for me.
Yeah, it's also about alignment then first, because there's so many systems I think that don't work together. First we need to align. We've seen that in COVID, that when there was a problem, everyone went the same direction, but now there's so many directions. So first we need to align on the direction. We know it, but for some reason it's like, not working yet.
Any thoughts from this end of the panel? What would our amazing company unexpectedly achieve?
Well, I mean, I'm very inspired by what you shared about the city in China, and I'm traveling to China next week, so I try not to travel too much. But and we have a big presence in China, Schneider Electric, so I definitely want to introduce her to inspire the company there, see what we could do to do more of these types, and what could be the role of Schneider Electric in these communities. Because if they're shifting away from fossil fuel, well, what's next? What's being offered? What is the type of energy they're consuming there? So, and then we'll need to measure the impact, and then we'll need to bring in the community, and then we maybe need the power of the solar energy. So maybe just getting concrete with projects is one way to put everyone together.
Excellent.
Or maybe something to do with communicating across disciplines, like inspiring people to think about this in a cross-functional way and think about all the different parts there are to this particular problem, or to all problems, or to systems in general, and how if you bring together these different perspectives, you can inspire a new idea, because it's, again, about highlighting the things that we don't, none of us knows everything, and we don't know all the things that we don't know. And sometimes when you put different minds together, that's where magic happens. So maybe that could be something to do with that.
Excellent. We're getting into the inspirational quote part of the session now, as you can tell. So in the final minute and a half, I'm going to ask each panel member to just give their final thoughts that they think would be good for you guys to have in your heads, as we all hope to aim for an inspired future food design. Who would like to go first? Marjan.
Okay. Well, what I think is the power of hope, and the hope that we together can solve things, because without hope there's no life. So I think that's really what we need. And hope is not being naive, it's being that we know the things we know and still able to find solution together in a positive way.
Absolutely.
I've written something while you were talking.
Taking notes.
I was thinking that if we really want truly resilient ecosystems, we must educate designers not only to innovate, but I think to regenerate and perhaps to lead from the shift from powering the planet to restoring the planet.
That really, really resonates.
Yeah.
Yingwen Yang, did you want to offer a final thought?
Okay. My hope is to achieve industrial decarbonization in Pingshan by transitioning from coal to renewables, repurposing industrial waste into eco parks with that improve public health, and transforming 12 mining sites into cultural tourism hubs, building local identity, creating jobs, and building climate resilience for a sustainable future. It's my hope.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Vanessa.
Well, I had a quote that I've written down, but you said twice unknown, and this is it's from a person I definitely don't admire, Donald Rumsfeld, but there's the known unknown and the known known, and when I think about nature, there's so much we don't know, and so it's first humility, It's first like knowing about the unknown of nature when we're dealing with nature and how it may react to what we're imposing on it. And then my quote, that is one of my favorite quotes, is by Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And I think for what we have to invent for this new world where we redesign everything, well, there is no path, there is no blueprint, there is no, you just have to follow what whoever else was before you did. You just have to create anew. So.
She stole mine.
Gosh, you've got a few seconds to think of a second one, Zoe. Over to you.
It's a known unknown. What's it?
So, I'll go with a quote then. I think my favorite quote is very relevant to this, because we need renewable energy, we need infrastructure, it's absolutely essential, but we have to remember that it can always be improved, and there is always a way to make it better in terms of its impact on everything, on us, on nature, on the planet. And so I think in that context, my favorite quote is, "Anything that is in principle possible can be done if the intention to do so is sufficiently strong."
Gosh, I should have been taking notes throughout this session. What a wonderful set of ideas. We've covered an awful lot. These issues are highly complex, but we've got the science, we've got the design capabilities, we've got the will to do it, and we can all take an awful lot from that. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I hope you've all got some inspiration from it as well. So it just remains to give our panel a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.